Yeah, in this session, we're discussing issues pertaining to uh, promotion and the demotion. So, we all know that in one way or another, each and every, not each and every, but most employees might go through these processes like promotion. In one way or another, someone can be promoted, or in other cases, someone can be demoted. So, when we talk about promotion, this is a sentence in the hierarchy. For example, an employee can move from a manager position to a director position, or from an officer position to a director position, or to a manager position. So it also happens that sometimes an employee would be moved from a higher position to a lower position, and this can be in the same organization, or maybe can be transferred to a sister organization, and even in the other cases could be transferred to another district or region, so that could through promotion or demotion. So promotion could happen because of maybe after maybe interviews, even after performance assessments, or sometimes after attainment of higher qualifications. As for demotion, sometimes could be related to issues of funds not being available. You can negotiate, and the employer would say, instead of firing you, instead of terminating your services, maybe it's an offer which you are making to you, you should be demoted to a lower position. Or in some cases, it could be after a misconduct, then maybe they will demote you to a lower position. So all these things tend to happen within the organization. So I want to understand now how do you handle issues of promotion. So I think what is important for us to appreciate is whenever there is a vacancy, could be a vacancy on a senior position, for example, to look at to say there's a vacancy, and there are people, or one person maybe could be after performance assessment, for example, would be picked to assume the higher role. And in other cases, maybe someone could be the position would be advertised internally, and people have to compete through interviews, for example. So sometimes we find that people can be called for an interview, and we should be very systematic whenever we are doing this process of interviews, for example, because some people would be saying to say, why should I be interviewed? The 8 people, they know how I perform and all that. So I think interviews always have got some problems when it comes to promotion, because sometimes you are interviewing people whom you already know, and you already know their potential. And in my experience, for example, some interviews, when you are doing interviews for promotion, for example, you might have other people who might even state in the interview room to say, no, although this guy or this person has explained well, but he cannot be able to fit in this position in terms of work attitude, culture, and all that. It's always a problem. So, but now, if the person maybe has scored number one during the interviews, so I think the other people, of course, will say we don't use um, interviews. It's not only about how we have explained in the interview room, but now why or how would you score the candidates when you know that you're not using those scores within the interview? So it's always important whenever you're starting a process to say, oh no, we're going to do interviews. I think my assumption is to say the one who is number one should be able to be given that position, because when you go into the interview room, it is assumed that you put everyone at a constant. You're now no longer regarding their performance, because if you were regarding their performance, then you could have just used the performance aspect and promoted that particular person. So if you are doing interviews, it means maybe you are not convinced with their performance. Now you are now trying to promote them. Or of course, I know some organizations, because of their policies, especially in the public sector, they will say you cannot recruit someone without interviews. But that's not the gist of the story in this particular session. But what I'm trying to discuss is to say, because to me that one I would regard it as irregular, because there's no law that states that someone has to be recruited through interviews. There's no law that states that someone cannot be promoted because of performance. So I think there's a mix between what the law says and also what the best practices teaches us. So what is important for us to appreciate, we don't have a law that determines on how someone should be promoted. So if your policy, you can say, okay, fine, I think performance, we're looking at performance, the one who has scored, who has done well in the financial year, for example, could stand a big chance of being promoted. And promotion depends on availability of a vacancy. We're not to promote someone when there are no vacancies. But when a vacancy has arisen, then it means you go for one who did well or who has been performing in the previous years, because you want to you cannot promote mediocrity, for example. Yeah, so but that's my argument. You cannot promote mediocrity. So when you are saying interview is not the only tool that you should be used to promote someone, and you are going for someone maybe who is second, third, you are now just agreeing with my argument, which I'm making forward now, to say then it's better to use performance assessment, because in that regard you have now used the performance assessment and not the interviews, and the others are just good at talking and all that. Of course, I know, no, it's not only oral interview that is used. There are different interviews methods that are used, yeah, but the overall majority, but they didn't use the oral interviews, so they can be misleading. Sometimes some are just blessed with talking, and they able to, even I don't value interviews. For me, oral interviews, they are overrated, because to an extent that they work better for people who are able to express themselves better than others. So the interviews is always a problem. So to me, I would support to say, when you want to promote someone, it's better to use performance assessments, assuming, and write the word assuming the processes are objective. So because that's what is also key, because some people can take advantage and is scoring highly. They are men, they are women, for the sake of promoting them. So they will always promote them because they know, okay, you get a better score and I'll promote you. Yeah, because there are certain performance assessments which are not done objectively. We all know that, but assuming the processes are done what? Objectively. So interviews, as said, is one method that people tend to use when there are several candidates for the position, for example. And also at the same time, performance assessment, for example, people would use the performance assessment to promote some people. So this is what I'm saying. This one is a better approach to promote, because you only promote those people who are performing. Yeah, so assuming the process is objective and all that, you find that the people who are performing within the organizations are able to promote. And also it encourages others to work hard, so that they know to say, if they are to promote us, it will depend on our performance. And also at the same time, the line manager should be objective, professional in the way they conduct the interviews, the performance assessments. And lastly, interview people can also be promoted through attainment of higher qualifications. So if there are some organizations to say you cannot be able to be promoted to a certain level because you don't have a qualification. So after you have acquired a qualification, they can be able to promote you. Of course, others, we know they don't give anything. Others, because also it depends on the availability of the positions. Sometimes they can give you, sometimes they cannot give you, and others are also maybe rewarded through salary increments, notches and all that. Sometimes it's just one-off payment to them. Sometimes it's just a token of appreciation by the organization as a way of acknowledging that they are now they have finished their education. So these are some of the things that we should be considering when you talk about promotion. And also in other cases, employees could be demoted from their position after maybe they have done some kind of a misconduct within the organization. They have been involved in a misconduct. They can be demoted in their positions and still continue to work within the organizations. Of course, the demotion will not be for life, but I think there is a lot of counseling needed to counsel them, to educate them. That is not the end of everything. Well, if they are able to improve, they can also be promoted back to position, even higher positions than they were holding. So it's always important. It's just a matter of we always have deviance, so but they should be managed. And instead of firing them, you just maybe demote them to a certain position. Yeah. So I think What is important is also for organizations to have, likewise, they need to have a training policy, recruitment policy, the disciplinary policy, among other policies. It's always also important to have a promotion policy in terms of how you are going to manage your promotions. Which methods are you going to use when you talk about promotion, and when are you considering for promotion? So these are some of the things of that, and we should also be mindful of the fact that promotion is not a right. Yeah, the employer should be able to see that they have good trust in you. They see the potential in you, that they can be able to promote you to that senior position. So it's also important to appreciate that the promotion is not a right. So I think that's what is very, very important, and this is what I wanted to share with you in this session.